Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from LCD Soundsystem, American Dream. LCD Soundsystem, a band that honestly barely even qualifies as electronic. They're really kind of their own thing. While they have a lot of electronic elements and more than a few tracks in which the main purpose appears to get you to dance and stuff, they also traverse heavily into the world of indie rock as well. I see them sometimes described as dance punk. While they are kinda barely on the fringe to the point of me having to justify covering them at all and put that disclaimer right out there, I'm doing it anyway. First of all, because I consider them electronic enough, and second of all, they did have a pretty extensive period for me in high school where I listened to them all the freaking time, and had no qualms about, like, what boundaries they were crossing, because, I mean, I didn't have a YouTube channel where I talk about only one genre of music. But whatever, enough justifications and all that stuff. Point is, I've been a huge fan of these guys for years now, and I'm now going to go down their discography so far. I don't love it all the way through, but the standouts are still great. A lot of really fun tracks on both discs. Also, I think Disc 2 is a little bit stronger than Disc 1. Probably my favorite release from them. Mostly instrumental, 6-part track with some other tracks on the side, and it's awesome. Made my favorites of all time list, as some may remember. Also, I have zero qualms about actually calling this particular album electronic. James Murphy even said it was inspired by Manuel Gosching's E2, E4, so there is that. This one I do love all the way through. Not a bad or even mediocre track on here. Also made my favorites of all time list. Not quite as good as Sound of Silver, but it comes pretty damn close. If this was the note to end their career on, which it seemed like it was going to be for a pretty long time, it was at least a satisfying one to go out with. And if people are mad at their reformation mainly thanks to this farewell concert, I get it. I absolutely get it. It is an absolutely freaking amazing concert and absolutely worth checking out. Which brings us to here, and so yeah, obviously these guys broke up. With the frontman James Murphy being worried about the band aging and quitting while they were ahead as to not become a joke in their old age, from what I can understand. Like, there are more than a few LCD Soundsystem tracks which are, you know, specifically about getting old, and also a lot in this particular new album, but I digress. But, like, their first single, Losing My Edge, it was about getting old. Like, and also about being a hipster music geek. But whatever. Now, some people heavily objected to the idea of LCD Soundsystem reforming at all and making a 4th album, mainly because they had finished their careers in such a climactic way with that insanely great Madison Square Garden concert. They had no big missteps in their career. A lot of people believed that if you were to add their legacy anymore, then it would completely ruin everything. That being said, I'm not one of those people. For whatever reason, I guess because I'd moved on to other things at the time, I'd waited until just the other day to actually hear The Long Goodbye. So, you know, I didn't actually feel betrayed by their reformation or anything like that. I was actually excited to hear what they would come up with next. Though that's not to say I wasn't wary about this album at all. I mean, I listened to the 3 pre-album singles, something that I almost never do these days. Call the Police and American Dream seemed like a bit of a shift for them away from their typically really fun style and seemed to be more about, you know, being more emotional and, you know, didn't initially stick out to me as particularly impressive. Though then, Tonite came out, that was much more exciting, sounding much more like their typical sound and style. Only then for me to listen to it like 7 times in succession and getting a little sick of it. But, you know, that's my own fault. Needless to say, this was one of my most anticipated albums of this year. I was both really excited but also really worried for this album. So how does American Dream fare? Well, okay, it's not Sound of Silver level of greatness. It's not even This Is Happening level of greatness. It's admittedly not an album that really pops out in terms of being really fun or really amazing compared to their other stuff, at least. But I don't think this album reflects as an embarrassment to their career in any regard. These guys had a lot riding on this comeback album. If they didn't deliver on something great, not even good, by the way, it had to be great, then they really would become like a giant joke and everyone would hope they just stopped for real. And I do not feel like this album remotely tarnished their legacy. It's just a solid album all around, and I'm really glad it happened. Again, doesn't hit quite the same heights as their last two albums, but it did take the weight of what if this album is just meh off my chest. It left me satisfied as a fan of the band. Not to say it was perfect, though, like going down track by track. I'm not huge on the opener, Oh Baby. Just gonna put that out there. I mean, it's a fine synth pop sort of track, giving me some, like, Erasure-y vibes out of it. That, yeah, it doesn't quite resonate with me as one of the stronger tracks on here. Still, should speak to this album's quality when a track like this is one of the worst. Then there's All Our Voices, which is the point at which this album really picks up for me. It's where LCD Soundsystem really start to sound more like themselves. Sounds like something that could have been on This Is Happening. Got more of a dance groove, a lot of great synth solos, and even a full verse from Nancy Wang, who sounds just as robotic as she always has. That, by the way, that's not a complaint. On every LCD Soundsystem album, she sounds like either a robot or a 10-year-old. But, you know, I've always liked her presence there. You know, she helps makes things more interesting. I Used To is a more banging synth-pop rock track. Sounds really intense and heavy, and the drumming gives me some weird 60s throwback vibe or something. But, you know, just the drumming. Kinda hard to describe. And then we have Change Your Mind, which kinda sounds like James Murphy is self-deprecating for the sake of the fans disappointed at their reformation. Like, he's talking about he's too old for this, he's not dangerous now, and the band's not professionals. But, you know, it could be over if you change your mind. I don't know, I thought it was kind of a funny concept. And the little 70s guitar licks here and there help add to the track being more fun. And then there's How Do You Sleep? Not sure if the title is an intentional John Lennon reference. Probably is, given James Murphy's music tastes. Now, this track doesn't start out this amazing. It's pretty dark and foreboding. But as the track goes on, it reveals itself to basically be a darker and more bitter version of Dance Yourself Clean, continually building up and adding more elements, ending in a much more engaging place than it started. Really nice track there. And of course, after that, we got the singles. Tonight has not grown on me much at all since first listen, though it's not gotten worse either. I mean, it already started out pretty high for me. Is it just another great dance groove here with James Murphy's self-proclaimed middle-aged rambling, still coming off in a weirdly catchy way. It's just a great LCD Soundsystem track. You know, it's the kind of track that makes LCD Soundsystem such a great and a unique band. Now, Call the Police an American Dream, unfortunately still not very original sounding, the former sounding like a U2 track, the latter sounding more like some New Order ballad or something. A lot of people have said that, though. But, you know, James Murphy still puts his all into these tracks, and, you know, he gives them more emotional weight, and because of this, you know, both have grown on me a significant amount since my first listen. Emotional Haircut is another funny, you know, punk-y sort of track. Reminds me of their track Drunk Girls a little bit, but I think I might have had a little more fun with this one, actually. Again, just listening to James Murphy run his mouth off about whatever stuff has got in his mind is always going to be fun. And finally, there's the closer, Black Screen. This track, kinda like Oh Baby, it's good, but it doesn't do as much for me as I'd like. It's grown on me more than that one has, though it's awfully simplistic, playing the same synth notes over and over and over in the background. And, you know, not really having many elements besides that. The drum beat is really weak, and James Murphy kind of sings the same melodies over and over, too. Now, minimalism is good sometimes. It just gets a little grating, given the track is, you know, over 11 minutes long. I mean, it is helped by the long piano solo that stretches over the last 4 minutes of the track. I really like that section, but the track as a whole doesn't really resonate with me as much as some of the other tracks on here. I mean, it works well as an ending, good place to finish from an emotional standpoint, but it's not exactly a New York I love you but you're bringing me down caliber ending here. That being said, some versions also have a bonus track, which is also, I think, a free download on their website right now. It is called Pulse V1. And this track, it's a pure instrumental track, focused entirely on the synths. In fact, it sounds more like an abstract and more interesting version of the recent deadmau5 track, Forware, in many parts. I don't know if this track would work better as an ending, but it is really cool, and I added it onto my iPod along with the rest of the album. So, final call on American Dream. I'll be real and say it's not their best work to date. LCD Soundsystem have sounded more energetic and more fun and more interesting before. But that being said, you know, a lot of the lyrics point to James Murphy sounding particularly disillusioned with the world we currently live in, because who the hell isn't right now? I mean, the album is called American Dream, and there couldn't possibly be any hint of irony in there, right? But the point is, the less energetic feel of this album at least feels, you know, justified. And it's like it serves a purpose. And helps set it apart from their other albums, too. It does have its less creative moments that seem more like homages to other artists rather than them doing their own thing, but none of these tracks sound unnatural coming out of LCD Soundsystem either. And James Murphy does succeed in getting all the emotions across. Personal enjoyment-wise, I'm all over the place on it. It seems to be different with every listen, really. First listen, it was in the low 7 range. Second listen, it was in the high 8 range. And it continually fluctuated in that area. And over the last couple of days, I think I might have listened to so much LCD Soundsystem that I'm getting burnt out on them again. But I think in the end, though, I can't fault this album for much. This album doesn't make me angry, doesn't leave me with a feeling of eh. It leaves me feeling like this is what I could have reasonably wanted out of a new LCD Soundsystem album. And you know, even though I might be making it sound kind of meh, I want to make it clear, LCD Soundsystem has had that untouchable legacy and that basically perfect arc as a band that they didn't need to add to in any more than they already did. And now that they've gone on and ruined that legacy, after this album, my opinion of the band hasn't changed at all. I still think they're great, they have a lot of great material in their relatively short discography, just now they've added 11 more great songs to that relatively short discography. And I will be happy to see any more new additions in the future. So yeah, not as great as some of their other stuff, but it's still a solid album, I still really like every track on here, and yeah, I think I'm overall feeling a solid 8 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.